want to talk to you today about how I made my first 1 million in annual gross revenue. That's a thought that still brings a smile to my face. But this is not a brag, it's a warning, and maybe even better, a good lesson. Because when I first crossed that line, I did it about 20 years ago, and it felt wonderful. I remember it like it was yesterday. At that time, I felt like I could do anything and everything, and now I had proof that I was a business success. Yeah, it really mattered to me. In reality, looking back, I had built something much more fragile than I understood at the time. And if I had known then what I know now, wouldn't you like to have a nickel for every time you have that thought? I would have started building something very differently, much earlier, and with greater purpose than just focusing on gross revenue. So here's my story. Back in 1994, thereabouts, I opened my first small business as a one-owner S corporation. I was a young securities lawyer, newly admitted to the bar, married, 2 young children, a mortgage, and student loans were coming due. I'd spent years working full-time and going to school full-time. Long hours were not a sacrifice to me. They were my default setting. It's how I got things done. So I started the same way a lot of founders start, with hard work, relentless hard work. And I purposefully underpriced my services. Patience was not one of my virtues, and I wanted to get the cash flow started quick. I wrote a simple direct mail letter. I explained how I could help, what I knew, where I could make a real difference. I sent out 100 letters a week. In those days, I used a program called WordPerfect, and I used my trusty dot matrix printer. Put the stamps on, licked the envelopes, and the calls started coming in almost immediately. And that felt amazing. It's also a little terrifying. I had clients, and well, now I had to quit marketing and start to deliver the services and start to hone my craft. That was the moment I stepped onto the founder's treadmill for the first time. I did so happily. From then on, I worked 10 to 12 hours a day, and then even a few more hours at home after dinner, and the kids were put to bed. I did everything myself. I was proud of that. In time, I hired some help, but even as things gradually improved, as I got better at being a young lawyer, I never really solved the core problem. I just outworked it. And then about 5 years in, a business client invited me into a second startup venture. That might be bad news for some. I welcomed the challenge. This was an early internet business for independent financial professionals, and it would turn out to be my career path for the next 20 years. It did very well, but for the time being, I now had 2 jobs. My law practice paid the bills. The second new business was my hope for the future, for something bigger and better and more valuable. And because I didn't know a better way, I attacked both with the same skill set: hard work, control everything, push through, grow, grow, grow. For a while, it worked. Maybe a better way to say that is I made it work. I made them both work for as long as I could. This new business venture grossed around 100,000 in year 1. A year later, it doubled in size, and then it doubled again. At this point, I sold my law practice because there wasn't any time left in the day, but I reinvested the proceeds in this new business, and in a while, we doubled in size again. So from the outside, I think this probably looked like a rocket ship. From the inside, very different story. It was increasingly fragile because I was the throughput system. Everything routed through me. I built it that way. I didn't take a vacation for 7 years during that stretch. I think I did work 7 days a week. I didn't care. I just wanted to grow and get to a point where I felt safe and strong as a business. And then one day, the business crossed 1 million in annual gross revenue. And I remember how that felt. I felt powerful, successful, validated. I earned it, every bit of it. I thought I was there, wherever that was, but I had climbed the mountain and summited it. By the way, we're talking 1 million gross, not net. Honestly, I just didn't care. At the time, I got paid. I had something to show for all my work and the risk I took, and boy, $1 million in gross sounded so good. But that's not really what I want to talk to you about. But thanks for listening to my story. It's still fun to tell it. Here's what I came to learn and what I want to share with you. Revenue is not the same as freedom. Hard work is not a lasting strategy. And growth is not the same as scale. In truth, when I hit that first million, I was at a stall point. I had built a bigger business, yes, but I had not built a reliable operating system. I don't think I had any operating system at all. It was just what I decided to do that day. Every important decision ran through me. I worked constantly just to keep up, and I couldn't grow past the 1 million gross revenue number. There were no more hours left in the day. There wasn't any more energy to go any further. And then the Great Recession came in. We barely made it through. I still don't know how, but I did know that we needed something that was more scalable, something bigger than just what I could do. I didn't really know where to start. They didn't teach this kind of stuff in law school or undergrad. So, and frankly, I didn't have any time to think and plan because I was trapped inside the very machine I built. By this time, I had 8 people on staff. It didn't matter. Everything still ran through me. So even though we could grow a little bigger, towards that $1 million number, I was even busier. I answered questions from everybody. I felt more important than ever. And that's part of the trap. But I learned eventually. And here's what I did next. Brought in an outside consultant. He spent time studying the business, talking to the staff, listening to calls, watching how I worked. I thought he'd be very impressed with our success and how I handled it all no matter what. And then one day, he came into my office, shut the door kind of hard, and he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "Stop it. Just stop it. This is never going to work. Everything can't depend on you." I was shocked, a little offended, honestly, but he was right. And that was the beginning of everything changing for the better. So as we wrap this up, please take the opportunity, learn from my mistakes, not yours. Build the proper foundation and systems from day one. In fact, probably even before you open your doors, build by design on purpose. Know where you're going and why and how. Think those things out and commit pen to paper. So if you're on that path, to do it all yourself path right now, if you're working constantly solving everything and telling yourself, you'll fix the structure later, I want you to hear something very clearly. Do not wait to build your business for success. Don't assume that systems and processes will somehow develop on their own while you stay busy, or that somehow it will be easier to add these foundational pieces when you're bigger and have more money. I can tell you from experience, it will not. And that's why I wrote The Founder's Treadmill. Not because I read about this problem, not because I heard about it, because I lived it twice. This little book, you can read it in a weekend and start applying it on Monday morning. At the very least, I hope I've given you something to think about. Thank you for listening.